Hi Lauren, how are you doing?
I am very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. Thank you very much for taking the time to join me on a Friday afternoon. I feel privileged because most people are wanting to switch off by now. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
No problem, no problem at all. Um, Obviously, you know what the podcast's about. It's all about culture. It's all about high performing teams and how you build them. So we've had a number of conversations now, so I know who you are. But for anybody listening that doesn't, if you just give us a bit of an overview of who you are, what you do, and your team, your management experience, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I'm Lauren. I'm a software engineering senior manager at Dunelm, and my role is basically people focused. So, I work with our engineers on everything from personal development to coaching them through challenges, to helping them kind of decide what their long-term career aspirations are. And then at a department level within engineering, it's all about that culture, like you mentioned, and how do we create that culture within the department itself. So yeah, it's busy.
Perfect, perfect. Exciting times. And before I forget, I just something you mentioned there. As an engineering manager, I take it, you'll be totally hands off. Will you? Is it a lot of all your time just focused on self development, but also managing other people, managing teams rather than anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't make any technical decisions. I'm not hands-on with the code at all. So I've got 17 direct reports, so I
Wow.
support them in all of that personal development sort of thing, as I mentioned.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you very much for that overview. I always ask people this just to kickstart things, but what does your journey into tech look like? How did you get into it originally?
Yeah, so I did computer science at university. So I got my bachelor's in 2019 and then immediately joined the graduate scheme at Capital One. And that
Wow.
was a software engineering grad scheme. So spent 2 years basically learning as much as I could, kind of rotating around different teams within tech to work out what I enjoyed and what I was good at. Then ended up going into a web development team and specialized in quality. So kind of worked up the levels there and ended up being in charge of the strategy for the acquisitions platform at Cap One. So when you're applying for a credit card, obviously very critical journey that needs to be working. So
Yeah, yeah.
quite a high stress role. And that's kind of the point where I had the option of do I go down the individual contributor route and specialize further, or do I go down the leadership route and specialize in that? And obviously chose the leadership route and got into people management and then team leadership. And now where I am at Dunelm in senior manager position.
Perfect, perfect. Thanks very much for that. We'll dig into a little bit of your journey a little bit more because I think it'll be really interesting for people who are listening, who are similar stages in their career or a little bit earlier in their career, just to understand how you move through, how you move through the process and any advice you'd have. But just to start it off, I was going to be talking about culture. What's the culture like at Dunelm? I know, obviously, we spoke in the past. I know a few other people who work there, so I've got a bit of an insight. But if you could share it with other people, so what's the culture like, and how do they ensure that it keeps, it doesn't stay still? Does it? How does it evolve over time? How do the leadership responsible for that?
Hmm. Yeah, I think the thing that stood out to me the most around Dunelm and its culture is the level of support that people give to
Right.
each other, and everyone's happy to jump in and help and help to progress things or just support each other. Um, and also to go alongside that, there's a huge level of recognition that goes on between peers, but also top down as well. So we've got for example, like a recognition channel. And I think a lot of people probably mute it.
Yeah.
I like leaving it unmuted. And then I see all this positive recognition come through to people I don't
Nice.
work with. Like I don't know them, but it's just nice to have those little nuggets of positivity throughout the day. Just to see who's helping who and who's kind of praising each other for that proactivity, for helping out with even the smallest of things. So that's the big thing that's stood out to me. And then in terms of how the leadership influences that, so we're all, as a leadership team, very, very open to feedback and to try and build up that feedback culture with the teams. One thing that we introduced about a year ago was actually setting up regular monthly catch-ups with the teams themselves and with each individual team. And that's all about, they can escalate straight to us if there's any issues, or if there's any like big wins for the team, so that we've got that visibility, and it just closes that gap between us a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the sound of the recognition channel in Slack. Is that open to anybody? To anybody can can contribute to that?
Yeah, so fully open channel. I think it's through a company called Taco Giver, or at least that's
Right.
what the channel's called, and you send each other tacos. So it's very light-hearted. Like, it doesn't convert to anything. Like, it is just like an emoji on the screen, but it's that act of recognizing like your peers with just a nice message that everyone can see as well.
Yeah, I like that. How important do you think that is? You know, so for individuals, how important do you think that is for? Because we talked in the past about sort of psychological safety, building up of trust, and things like that. Is it? Did do people really buy into it? Is it used a lot?
Oh yeah, like my notifications are going all the time with this channel. But I think when we talk about recognition, there are so many different levels to it, and obviously
Mm,
like pay and progression are probably the top end of it. There's a lot of work that needs to go into that. And one of the nice things about Dunelm is that we've got recognition at all levels. So we've got that pay and progression process. We've got something called e-cards, which are business wide and you can send to anyone. And that's on kind of a separate platform. And it's kind of a little bit of a bigger deal, if you like. And
mm.
then these tacos, or this recognition channel, is kind of that small, everyday, I'll just drop someone a taco because they facilitated this meeting really well. Like, it's a small thing, but it makes a really big difference. And that's the thing I liked. It kind of builds up that level of recognition.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that, and I like it's open. So I did a podcast not so long ago, and somebody said to me that the phrase "praise in public."
Mm.
Yeah, so I like that. So you get a little taco everybody knows about. It's a really good way if anybody, any other companies are listening that they want to implement something like that. It's a good way of doing it. And what's the e card? What's the e card recognition process?
So it's similar. So it's through our internal kind of communications
Right.
platform, and you can just send, again, anyone an e-card, and they've got little different messages. A lot of them are quite like Dunelm pun related. I'm sure you can imagine. I'm not going to try and remember any of them on the spot. But that one then goes on to, again, a recognition wall. And
Oh,
what
nice.
we do within engineering is we filter all those e-cards down, for those that have been sent or received by anyone in the engineering department. And then in our regular all hands meeting, we then put all of those names on a wheel, for those who have sent cards and those who have received them. And then we offer up a duvet day, so you can take a free day off
Ah,
essentially,
nice.
to try and then encourage people to like send the cards, but also like that kind of extra bit of reward if you do receive a card as well.
I like that. So it's a real wraparound, and there's a real focus really from the leadership team and driving that initiative to make sure people are getting the feedback on the work that they've done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. And do Dunelm, because you're hybrid working, is that right? Yeah. Do Dunelm do anything where they focus on getting the teams together, whether that's additional leadership teams or the whole engineering teams or testing, or I suppose the different areas?
Yeah, so we'll have one of our big events of the calendar year is our tech summit. So that is basically
Right.
an internal conference. It's in person. And all the folks from tech, so that's engineers, business analysts, product, everyone is invited. And we get speakers internally to, share what their teams worked on, a particularly innovative solution to something. It's all about that knowledge sharing and networking and meeting people that, we all work together, but we don't work closely together. So that's probably like the big in-person calendar event of the year. But we encourage teams to take ownership of what are the opportunities, the meetings, the sessions that would be much more valuable in person, and encourage them to put those sessions in, to make sure that they're getting that in-person connection. Because I'm of the camp that I think it's important that we get together in person. And for me, working with people in person strengthens the relationship for me to then lean on when we're working remotely. So I find it really important to make those times and make the travel.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is important. So, do you, and at these events, obviously, I said, in it, bit of insight for other people listening as well, if they're pulling social events together, do you mix within the teams? Is there, does software engineering mix with test, if you like, just so do you get to know people outside of your environment?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So even in beyond kind of our Tech Summit conference, our networks, so our colleague networks will run in-person events as well. So for example, like Diwali was probably the most recent one where we were doing candle painting and you would have loads of people from different departments come and sit, and I went up for a bit and painted a candle, and you just get chatting to people and
Yeah.
connecting with them on something kind of outside of work as well. So you don't feel bad when you have to reach out to them for a favor on a work related thing. You've kind of built that relationship away from the day to day.
Yeah, I like that. It's imperative, isn't it? I think, especially where you've got the hybrid or remote environments, that organisations really drive an initiative or set people things in place where people can get together and build up those in person relationships. I was going to ask you, obviously, your career progress. So you started. How did you make your way? For anyone listening who's on a similar journey or wants to do the journey, how did you make your way from individual contributor or member of the team onto the leadership ladder? Was there a sort of tipping point of you deciding to go down that route, or how did it work?
I think for me, it was quite a natural journey. I was just doing the things that I enjoyed. So one of the
Yeah.
foundational building blocks for me was when I started being able to mentor people from
Okay.
a technical perspective. And it started out just in team, when there's a new joiner in the team or someone a bit more junior, and you've got the expertise or the knowledge on a certain piece of work, just mentoring them, guiding them through it. And that kind of just naturally built of oh, well, I can help another person in a different team with this task as well. So let me build on that. I basically started this building this network of people I was mentoring. And then I saw that there was some coaching training that my company was offering. So I opted in to do that as well. And that was something that really interested me and I enjoyed it. So then I started coaching people. And that kind of again built up and up. And I had managers like requesting me to come and just help coach like people in their team to get that kind of outside of team perspective. And I found that I was enjoying those kind of conversations that are leadership conversations and management conversations. And then it got to the point where I felt like I'd built up the skills, like alongside the mentorship and the coaching around communication and time management and organization, like kind of all the things that come under leadership. It got to a point where I requested that I could manage people, even though I wasn't a like team leader,
Yeah.
which worked really nicely because I still had kind of my manager like managing the team, but I managed a couple of people then within the team. So I had that
Nice.
backup, I had that fail safe if I couldn't handle a situation, and then just kept building up that experience and finding the opportunities to do that experience as well. So that was kind of the natural progression for me, and I enjoyed it, which was the main thing for me in that journey.
Yeah, definitely. And listening to you there, it sounds like, if you're thinking about other people doing the journey, it sounds like you were
Mm.
driving your career progression rather than waiting for somebody else to take. You can't have other people taking ownership of your career, can you? You need a little bit of luck with the leaders that are around you. But it sounds like, would your advice be that you need to drive your own career progression?
100%. And that can just look like reading books in your own time, like leadership books. Like I started off obviously not knowing anything about leadership. So my first protocol was, okay, let me gather that um I guess foundational like technical
Yeah.
knowledge to understand, what leadership is, what communication is, then asking for those opportunities to then implement that understanding and that knowledge to practice it essentially and put it into practice. But I'm a big believer in driving your own development, and no one is going to care about your development more than you should. So if you're not
Yeah.
driving it, no one else is going to drive it for you.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. And I know to this day, and you're considerably younger than me, and you're still on your career journey. But I know you invest time in your leadership development, don't you? Could you share a few little snippets of what you have done or what you do? I know we've talked about books and podcasts that we've mutually listened to previously, but
Yeah, I think a big part of it for me now that I'm in that leadership role is talking to other leaders.
right,
As you say, like I'm still very early on in my kind of leadership journey in itself, and there are so many situations that I've not experienced yet, and I'm sure I will experience over the time. But just talking to other leaders that have been on their own leadership journey and have probably more experience than me really helps me to get that different perspective. So that's a huge part of my learning at the moment is just connecting and networking with other leaders. But I think if you're looking at kind of when you're first starting out, I would always recommend getting a mentor, but a leadership
right.
specific mentor. Kind of for that same thing of just being able to bounce ideas and get different perspectives on situations. I will always recommend books and podcasts to people because I think that's just a very consumable way um, of getting that experience, but also just finding leadership in the everyday. I think people get so hung up on titles and roles and think, oh, I'm not a leader because I've not got this position. And that's just not true. There's so many leadership opportunities in the day to day. You just need to find them and really kind of knuckle down on them and be present when you're doing them to understand, oh, this is an opportunity for me to practice my communication. Let me try this technique I saw in this book and I'll try it for this and see how it goes. That sort of approach.
Yeah, I love that. It's a couple of things like putting yourself outside your comfort zone.
Mm.
Let me practice what I've learned. But also, I think some people have the opinion that you need to have a team leader title or a management title before you can go into that leader. But there are opportunities for you to lead and coach without those titles as well, isn't it? And like you said, probably just look for those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And most of the time, if you offer to mentor or coach someone, they're not going to say no. Like a lot of people do want to have that support. And most of the time, if you're asking for something, the worst thing someone will say is no. And then you just ask someone else. So I would say it's the same thing. Drive your own development, right? Like go out there and ask the question and see what you get back.
Yeah, exactly. That's really good advice. Um, One thing I wanted to ask as well. So you've been part of a team, and then you went to manage that team. How did you find that? How did you find that transition, and how did you cope with being part of a team to then be leading it? Was that difficult?
I think there were difficult aspects. I was very lucky with my first team that I stepped into lead in that I'd been in that team in the past. So I already had relationships with the
Right.
individuals in that team, which I think made it easier for me to then settle in and be able to get their support and their buy-in because they'd seen what I'm like and they trusted me in my ability to do that role. So I definitely was very lucky in my first team lead opportunity, but still like within that, just stepping into those rooms that I hadn't been in before of other leaders, like that was a completely new experience for me. And that was probably where a lot of my anxiety and apprehension came from is making sure that I represent myself and my team and my engineers the right way in those rooms. So there was a lot of learning in there for me.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And so obviously you moved from your first role, then went into Dunelm, so you're picking up a fresh team, if you like. Do you have any go to go to strategies or way? It's a new team. You need to build those relationships, build those trusts. Is there anything that you do when you first land to start building that trust quickly or building those relationships?
I think the first thing I would recommend for anyone is getting those like one-to-one catch-ups in with the individuals and getting to know people as individuals and what's going on in their lives and even what their career aspirations are as well. So building that one-to-one trust will lay the foundations for the rest of the team to kind of have that culture of trust and psychological safety. But I think even like on a smaller and maybe more fun scale of when I started my first team lead role with the team that I knew very well, we were kind of going through a period of there wasn't a huge amount on the roadmap and everyone was a bit nervous and there was just a lot of anxiety within the team. So um, we started doing Wordle at the end of our morning stand-ups, which sounds ridiculous and it sounds like such a small thing, but just taking 5 minutes at the end of your stand up at the start of your day where the whole team is working on like one thing, they're solving a problem, right? And having that win most of the time, there were a few times we didn't get the word, but having that win right at the start of the day as a team you've worked together to achieve, no matter if it is silly and just the word, or it really set people up for the rest of the day and built kind of that good culture of, you know, fun, we're working together. We're going to make the time to have fun as well.
Yeah, it's bringing, like you say, it's teamwork, isn't it? It doesn't matter what it is, but you're bringing the team together. Everyone's having an input, you're getting a win, and no matter how small a win is, it makes everyone happy, doesn't it? It kicks you on.
100%.
Um, I know one thing we spoke about in the past. You're a big advocate of women in tech. I know that sort of thing. Would they, obviously being a woman going into a leadership role, what advice would you give? Because you spoke to me about this in the past, and I was like, and it goes against the grain, doesn't it? Hopefully,
Yeah.
this is what you're going to say. What advice would you give to a female, progressing into leadership roles?
Yes, potentially controversial. This is where you're going to get your views. Um, so I guess the traditional advice or the thing that people warn against is, you know, don't be the one that offers to take the notes in the meeting, or don't be the one that offers to do the admin work. And I can understand that advice. Absolutely, I can understand that. However, in my experience, those are opportunities for you to take control or to find leadership in those activities. So if we take like the note taking one, for example, because I think that's quite a common one that can get put on women potentially more than men. And actually what I've found in the past is I will volunteer to take notes because then I have all of the context in front of me. And what I can then do is almost control the conversation or guide the conversation in a way that comes across in a very like leadership manner. So if someone's talking about a point that's already been mentioned, you've got that point written down in your notes. So you can say, well, actually, this person talked about this about 20 minutes ago. Do we need to like circle back and cover that context again? Or actually, can we move on to, you know, the next point we've got on our agenda? Or even if you don't feel comfortable doing that in the meeting, after the meeting, you're the one that's going to be sending out the notes and saying, this action is against this person, etc., etc. What are the next steps? And you can then drive that engagement further. So, using examples like that of how do you find the opportunity to apply those leadership techniques that you've learned in your reading, your podcast, talking to each other, and doing it in your everyday.
I like that. I like that. You're basically, you're reframing it, aren't you? You're putting yourself into a position where you're sort of central to what's going on, or pivotal to what's going on. And it gives you access to a lot more information, and I suppose allows you to influence them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Brilliant. What do you think your biggest challenge has been as a leader in your career so far? What have you found the biggest challenge, and how have you overcome it, or are you trying to overcome it if it's current?
So I think that probably the most surprising challenge that I wasn't really expecting or hadn't prepared for was that leading through change as
Yeah.
a leader. And we've had a lot of changes at Dunelm, so we've been doing that quite a lot. And actually, we've learned a lot as we've gone through each of those stages of changes as well. So, we just did a kind of round of team moves, and nothing crazy. Like, as you're aware, every company moves people
Yeah,
around
yeah, yeah.
based on work priority. But this was just quite a few changes. And the amount of time and effort we put into the plan for communication, like who was going to tell who what and when were they going to tell it, and who did we need to get approval from, sign off from, and what was the why behind the change, and how do we communicate that to each individual. And I just never really had comprehended that amount of thought had to be put in ahead of like what was probably a 5 to 10 minute conversation, and in the end went absolutely fine. But it only was 5 to 10 minutes and went fine because we put about a week's worth of effort into the message beforehand. So that was like a huge learning curve for me when you're the one faced with delivering that change message and then having to deal with the reaction like a lot of the time, and how do you guide people through how they process the information and support them if that support is needed.
Do you think I really like that? Do you think that'll be your blueprint to um, take through any change initiatives that go in the future? Just the prep work is just so important. So more prep work, and it makes the delivery of the message a lot easier.
100%. And, everyone's favorite, Simon Sinek, it's always about the why. Like, that's what
I was going to
people
say
will
that.
always come back to. So, as I say, the last round of kind of change we were communicating, we spent a lot of time really drilling into, okay, what's the why behind the change? But then what is going to be the why to each of these individuals as well? And what's going to matter to them as we go through that change? And how can we make sure we're supporting them in that, and making sure that they understand that we've considered that as we've made the changes as well.
I really like that. I never thought of that, because I was going to ask you. You picked me to it with the why. So I was going to say, how important is the why, so that they understand why the change is coming. But I never thought of taking it to the granular perspective of the why for the why it will impact the individual, or the why for the individual.
Yeah, and obviously it only works up to a certain, it's not very scalable. It only
Yeah.
works up to a certain number of people. But even if you're talking business change, I guess there's nothing stopping you saying, okay, well, people in this department are probably going to react this way, or this is the why for this specific department versus this other department we've got over here, and catering kind of more of the waterfall messages down based on that.
Yeah, I think change is so difficult, isn't it? Because there's so many diverse reactions. Some people
Mm.
are fine with it, but you get some real resistance. Real
Yeah.
resistance. Yeah, I experienced it a few years ago, and I'd never been, I'd never been in the situation before. The business I worked for was bought out, and like some of the responses to that as we were progressing through it was a bit of an eye opener, really. So it's understanding people's reactions to that, isn't it, and how you can support them. Did you? Did you have to change your communication style depending on the individual that you were giving the information to?
Oh yeah, 100%. And I would do that in my one-to-ones regularly anyway. So
Right,
what I tend to do with the individuals I talk to is gauge kind of their energy levels.
right.
Um, and then I'll match them. Because what you don't want to do is, for someone who is like quite calm and quite relaxed and quite quiet, you don't want to come at them
Yeah.
full force, high energy. Like, they will kind of retract a bit to that. But if you get someone that's super high energy and chatty, and you come in and you're like very calm and very relaxed, they're gonna feel like they're too much, or there's something wrong with you. And yeah, it can just lead to a lot of miscommunication just from body language and tone alone. So what I try and do is mirror the energy that people give me back to them, so that I can make sure they're comfortable, and they feel like, going back to that kind of trust and psychological safety place, that I'm similar to them and communicate in the way that they need me to.
Right, okay, okay, that makes sense. And would you ever communicate in written format first for certain individuals? Or if you were giving information such as going through the change process that you did do, is it always one-to-one, whether that's on Teams or in person?
So I think it would depend on the individual for me. So when I get started with any of my direct reports, we do a kind of manual to me
Ah,
process. So
right.
it's like, how do you like to be communicated? How do you like to be recognized? How do you like feedback? All of that stuff. So what that will define is how people like to be communicated with, and if they prefer Slack messages before a meeting, or they don't like the dreaded, do you have 5 minutes to chat from their manager, then I can accommodate to that. Within reason, like, there are definitely some circumstances where I'll have to message someone and say, like, I need to chat to you about something. I prefer to do it over video call or in person if we can, like, can we schedule that in? But there's nothing to worry about. Or I'll give a high
Yeah.
level, like, it's about an upcoming team change, but we'll chat through it. Like, if you've got any questions, we can jump on now. So I think you just gauge from the individual and have that conversation up front.
Okay, okay. I like that manual to me thing that you just mentioned. Is that for your new joiners within your team, or whenever you join a team, so you get to know them? Is that one of the first things you do, so you as a manager can always refer back to that and say, right, okay, this is how they like to work or be dealt with.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can define kind of what each of the categories are, of what's important to you as a manager. I mean, there's loads of templates online for different manuals of me.
Right. Okay.
It just sets the stage very, very early on, and you can refer back to it as well. So if I've got a bit of feedback from an individual, I'll go back to their manual of me and say, okay, how do they like to receive feedback? Let me do it that way first, and then we'll chat through in person, for example.
That's brilliant. I've never heard of that before.
Oh,
I've never heard of that before. It's really good. I'm going to use that. I'm going to steal it and use it in in
you're
future.
welcome.
Thank you. Because I've heard of, obviously, the Myers Briggs assessments and things like that people do, but never that. So I like that. Thank you very much. That's spot on. One of the things that you spoke to me about last time we met was altering your communication style depending on who you're speaking to. But
Mm.
before we get onto that, you mentioned something to me about being in a meeting and thinking about, you sat in a meeting. There's lots of comments being made, and you think, I need to get into the conversation. But I was pretty sure you said to me, only say something if it's going to add value or move the needle on the conversation, which I found really interesting. Can you expand on that and share that with the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was actually based on like a bit of feedback or advice I got very, very early on the graduate scheme actually that I was on. And as you can see, like I'm a talker. And so in meetings, like I thought engagement looked like talking and replying to people and getting the basically filling the silence is probably how I describe it. And my senior manager at the time kind of just came over to me and he was like, look, like, love the engagement, love the passion. Your next build, like your next learn on this is to work out if what you're saying is going to add value to the conversation or if it's going to progress it in the right way. And if it's not doing any of that, you don't need to say it. And like that was it. And all that does is like I'm still engaged in conversations, but my contributions are now much more valuable. And that goes back into kind of people's perception of me and how I communicate. So I'm not just chattering away about absolute nonsense. Like they know that when I'm speaking up, it's because I've got something valuable to add, or I'm going to progress the conversation in the right way.
That's really interesting, because we've all been in meetings, I suppose, until you learn something like this, where you feel, I need to say something, and you're just putting pressure on yourself, aren't you? And
Well,
quite often you can just come out with something that's just irrelevant or doesn't move the needle.
yeah, absolutely.
And what about the communication styles? I suppose we covered it a little bit with the way that you approach individuals. Does it depend on? I don't know. Does it depend on the seniority of the person? How do you look to adapt those styles?
Yeah, so I think it's so tricky because the Capital One and Dunelm, it's a very flat hierarchy. So I don't feel like I necessarily, let's say when I'm chatting with my CTIO, I don't feel like I have to act a certain way or communicate particularly differently. Obviously, there are certain scenarios where you'd probably alter it a little bit in terms of like formality. And whatnot. But the thing for me, and I think the thing that people respond to most is like that authentic leadership and being authentic to yourself. And the thing I love about Dunelm is that I can be my authentic self and I don't feel like I have to adjust too much, like within reason, obviously, to the people that I'm talking to. So that's actually worked out quite well for me.
Yeah, being in an environment like that is probably ideal, isn't it? And I think I was talking to somebody the other week, and they mentioned to me about managing up. It's not just about managing your team, but also managing up as well. And showcasing what your team does to sort of elevate it to the to senior leadership team. Is that something that you consciously do as a leader?
Yeah, absolutely. The managing up is one of my favorite concepts because people don't realize it. That as a manager, if people like manage up to me, I can see it and I love it. So like, if you do it, you should be doing it if you're not doing it. But I've had people in the past like come to one-to-ones and they're like, these are all the points I want to talk through. Like, this is our agenda for the one-to-one. And I'm like, that's great. Let's talk through it. Like, you've come prepared. You know what you want to talk about. That beats us just chatting away about nothing for half an hour because I've not got anything on my list. So it's that like preparedness. But also it goes back to that like driving your own development. Like, if you've got a manager who's maybe not as invested in your development or not as invested as you want them to be, really setting that expectation with them of, I would like to do a progress check-in on my objectives next week or next time we have a one-to-one. Can we make sure that we go through that next time and just almost like, well, manage them up, right? Set that expectation and set those meetings as well.
Perfect. That's good. That's really interesting. Thank you very much for that. I'm just going to flip on to, I've got a couple more questions for you, if that's all right. And it's about managing. Do you have any techniques for managing difficult stakeholders? I don't know what you must have come across some, and where we won't mention any businesses or any names or anything like that. But any experience, anyone finding it difficult to manage certain stakeholders?
So you can beep out the names, right? In
Yeah.
post-production. Yeah, I'll keep it anonymous.
Yeah.
I think the thing for me, and it's not necessarily just like stakeholders, like obviously women in tech perspective, I do have to deal with a lot of difficult people and have done in the past. So I think one of the phrases that gets thrown around a lot is assume positive intent. I personally don't like that one just because speaking to other women in tech, it kind of allows for microaggressions to come through and it guides people to not challenge them. You're just supposed to assume that, oh, they didn't mean it. Like, we're assuming positive intent. So the phrase, I guess, that I would always refer to is assume ignorance, not malice. And what that does is it opens us up to share knowledge with people. So, for example, in the stakeholder conversation, if you've got a stakeholder that's really, I don't know, drilling a deadline down and saying, no, it needs to be done next week, blah, 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 for whatever reason, and you know it's not going to happen next week, just assume that they don't have the same information you have about why it can't go ahead next week. And I would just have a conversation and say, okay, this is my pool of knowledge of why I think it's not going to go ahead next week. Can you share your pool of knowledge with me of like, why does it need to go in next week, or what pressures are you getting? And then let's work together with our shared pool of knowledge to work out, okay, what is the middle ground here? Like, what can we do? What can we deprioritize? What's the MVP, etc., to then move things forward?
I like that. Right, I like that. But what was the first phrase you mentioned that was thrown around quite a bit?
So assuming
Issue?
positive intent.
Right, okay. Which would be, so you have to explain it to me because I'm a nugget. But
Oh, so that would be so I'm trying to think of a woman in tech example. So let's say you're in a meeting and someone is constantly talking over you, for
right,
example.
yeah.
You could, if you were assuming positive intent, say, okay, they don't mean it, like I'm not gonna mention it, like they're not doing it on purpose, so I'll just leave it, it'll be fine. Whereas if you go down the assume ignorance, you can say, okay, well, they don't know what they're doing. They're not doing it on purpose to me, but let me educate them and just give them the feedback and say, oh, actually, like, you've been interrupting me in this meeting. I know you don't mean to do it, but this is the effect it has on me. So that's just like the little kind of reframing.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I like that. It's reframing it, but allowing you a situation in order to give that feedback, isn't it? To help that individual develop as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, wow. Right. I really like, again, every day's a learning day. So yeah, I'm definitely picking stuff up on this podcast. Another one I was going to say is it, how would you build, you come into a new business, you've got new stakeholders. How would you go about building trust with a new stakeholder quickly?
I think the easiest way of doing it is saying you're going to do something and then do it.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
immediately, and it can be something small. It's not going to be like I'm going to deliver this whole project and then do it. But it can just be something as simple as, oh, I'll drop you a link to that, I don't know, book I mentioned. Or, oh yeah, I'll send the notes straight after the meeting, and I'll send you a summary because I know you're interested in X, Y, and Z. And just showing that you can be trusted to deliver on what you say. It's the same with like direct reports as well. It's building that accountability trust that when you say you're going to do something, it's going to be done. And then also what I mentioned around the adding value to conversations. Again, like if you're only piping up when you've got something to say,
Yeah.
people will listen much more and trust what you say more. But what I've discovered coming into a leadership position, where obviously I've not been in the business, I've not built that network and not kind of gone up the levels and shown I know my stuff, is that building trust does take time, and people
Right.
will be like apprehensive of you because they don't know your experience, right? Like you're coming in fresh, or stakeholders coming in fresh, and they don't know your personal brand or the reputation you've built. So it's about having those little moments and touch points, and almost proving that your personal brand is who you are, and bringing them on that journey.
So do you think it's important as a leader for anyone listening to this, and any leader, I suppose, just to understand, probably take a little bit of pressure off yourself to understand it takes time. It can't
Oh
be
yeah,
done. It can't be done overnight. Don't expect it to happen overnight. Just almost take a bit of pressure off yourself. It does take time.
100%. Yeah, it's not going to be built in a day.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. And you mentioned personal brand in there. How important do you think that is within a role to get yourself out there?
Oh, hugely. Like what
Mm.
they say, it's like it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
a huge amount of that comes under personal brand and how you like kind of present yourself and how you carry yourself in certain scenarios and certain situations. So if you handle talking about change, if you handle a change message really well, people are going to build that trust, and that will go into your personal brand. So you know, if they're talking to another engineer or another person around the change, they'll reiterate, "Oh, actually, my manager did this really well for me, and like, I really respect the way that they like supported me through that change." And that just instills that trust, and builds up that personal brand as well. But it can look like anything. Like we talked about those networking in-person opportunities. Like I don't celebrate Diwali personally, but I was like very, very
yeah,
happy to
yeah,
go
yeah.
along and experience it and talk to other people that are celebrating it. And that again, I didn't do it for personal brand, but it definitely comes into the personal brand of I'm open to learning. I'm open to,
Yeah,
what can be an uncomfortable conversation around
yeah.
learning and getting out of my comfort zone. So even little things like that will then build your personal brand as well.
That's really helpful. That's really helpful for anybody listening there. Definitely, definitely. I think it's only becoming apparent, I suppose more so with this as social media grows and as, things like that grow, it becomes more important or more apparent that the personal brand does
Mm.
work inside and outside of the organization. One of the things, I promise not to bend your ear for much longer with the Friday afternoon, but one of the other things you mentioned to me is you found yourself as a very young leader in a room of senior leaders.
Mm.
Um, I don't know whether that was at your previous role.
Mm.
Um, how did you deal with that? Does it go back to one of the ways where you're saying only contribute to move a conversation in meetings that raises you and people start to trust you straight away? But outside of that, how did you cope with that?
Yeah, so that particular kind of moment was in Capital One. And yeah, it was kind of my first big meeting with all the other managers. And I walked into this a big boardroom as well. It's very intimidating. Just walked into this huge boardroom, and there were people there that had been managing for longer than I had been alive, right? Like it was a room of experience.
Yeah,
And obviously I was quite nervous going in. So kind of settled in, and the kind of thought in my head of that moment was, this is a room of knowledge, and I want to get as much of that knowledge as I can. Like I want their years of experience to kind of be summarized and given to me in my very early parts of my journey. So the first few sessions were just listening and understanding and
Right.
hearing different people's perspectives. And then outside of that, I was already working with a few of the managers in that room anyway, and had relationships with them. So I just really invested in those relationships. So I had allies in the room as well. So again, they knew that I could do my job and I knew what I was talking about. So when I would bring an idea or challenge an idea in those sessions, there were a few people I knew would either back me up or they would challenge me in a way that they knew I would respond to as well, and not just kind of dismiss me or just say the idea is rubbish. Not that anyone would have done that. But it's just having those people that you know are safe almost in those scenarios that you can rely on and you can trust.
That's good. I really like that advice. So you're building a relationship, so you're creating allies, not just for pulling the information, their knowledge to help
Mm,
you move forward, but also so that they can support you in meetings as well.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, and they will naturally champion your cause as well, won't they? Moving forward as well.
Yeah, it's all about having those sponsors in the rooms as well that you're not in too. So it all comes together and builds out that network.
But that has to be a purposely driven from yourself, doesn't it?
Mhm.
You have to go and make those relationships
Yeah,
and put time and effort into those.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Final question for you. I know you've mentioned this to me previously, so I'll ask you, and I don't think you ever get over it, but you mentioned imposter syndrome.
Mm.
We chatted a while back and you were like, I've had a bit of a moment with imposter syndrome recently. How do you, for anyone listening, how have you overcome it? How did you, get through it and that kind of thing? How did you manage it? What was your go-to? Can you impart any advice on that?
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome is such a broad term, and I think it's
Mm.
one we like to use a lot for what actually is probably a lot of different things. So for me, like recently, one of the pivotal moments was um, if you've heard of Ilona Mayer, I think that's how you say her name. She's a USA rugby player, and she was doing an interview. I don't follow rugby, but this interview came up kind of on my feed, and the interviewer asked a very, very similar question of, how do you overcome imposter syndrome? And she just went, I don't know what that is. Like, I have worked hard for what I've got. Like,
Nice.
I put the hours in. Like, I know how much I've worked to get to where I am. So, no, I'm not an imposter about it. And I think that's
Nice.
such a mind shift
Yeah.
from, I think, what a lot of us suffer with of, as you say, that maybe I've not worked hard enough to be here. I don't belong in this room, or I don't shouldn't be in this role. And actually just that moment to recognize, well, you've done all the hard work. Like, you're the one that's probably seen all the hard work and actually driven that development and that change, and recognizing that. So that was definitely like a point for me where I was like, oh yeah, of course. Like, that makes so much sense. But kind of before that, like the tactic I myself was using, especially as I came into this role in Dunelm, because I didn't realize it was a senior manager role when I was going through the application for it. When I kind of got it and realized, I was a bit surprised that I'd got the role itself, but also immediately felt, oh gosh, like I'm not ready for this. Like, if I'd known it
Yeah.
was a senior manager role, I would not have gone for it. And in those moments and kind of moments since where I've thought, I'm out of my depth here. Like, this is not the position I should be in. If I can't trust in my own ability or my experience in that time, I will put the trust in the people that have brought me into that situation. So in the early days, it was, well, I trust the people that have interviewed me, that they know what they're doing to assess my ability to then bring me in. I can trust them on that. I trust my manager. I trust the interviewers. And now, if I'm brought in on a situation, I trust whoever has brought me into that situation, that they've brought me in because they believe I can help, or that I can do something to move it forward. And I can put my faith in them. If I can't have that faith in myself, I'll put my faith in them that they can make that decision, and I'll just go for it.
That's really good. That is really good. If you're doubting yourself,
Mm,
you're doubting yourself, but you're supporting yourself with the knowledge of they wouldn't have put me in this situation if they didn't think I was good enough for it.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. I really, really like that. That will help. That will definitely help people. It's a good twist on it and a good take on it. Um, and finally, definitely, finally, how do you decompress? How do you a lot of people, I struggle with it, to walk away from things, and you can carry on working and carry on. Like, how do you decompress and from tough situations or wind down?
Hmm. Yeah, I guess I'll interpret this as, how do you not think about stuff after work or after it's
Yeah, yeah,
happened? For me, like, that's part of the reason why I like going into the office, is that I've got a 30-minute commute. Like, I know that's time that I can just either mull something over for 30 minutes, and I know that
yeah,
as soon as I step out the car the other end, that's it. I've had my thinking time on the situation, or I can do a similar thing of, as soon as I get in the car, that's it. Like, I'm not thinking about it anymore. But also, I'm the sort of person where I will try and process a problem over and over and over again. And that's where a lot of my outside of work thinking comes from. So what
yeah.
I've started to do is like schedule thinking time. So if I know that I've got a
Um,
meeting that like I'm worried about, or I need to solve something before it, in my diary, I'll just block out 30 minutes, and that'll be my dedicated time to sit down and think about that problem, and worry about it, or try and come up with a solution. So just having that dedicated time that I know I will have time to worry about this, but the time is not right now when I'm at home trying to relax.
yeah.
So that's made a huge difference. And then, like, I guess all the usual stuff of like exercising, or just doing anything that will help your brain switch off, or change the context of your brain. So yeah, exercise. I go for a lot of walks, like go to the gym. Like, even just like spending time with friends where you're not thinking about work, like that helps hugely. But like any skill, it takes practice.
Yeah, exactly. I like the time blocking. I like the time blocking. So really, you're challenging a worry head on, aren't you? You start
Mm,
dedicating this period of time to, because it can mull over, and it can really get to you, can't it? But I'm putting this time aside, and we're going to work through the problem there. I think that time blocking is really helpful. And yeah, there's nothing. I know some people, especially in tech, there's the old in the office, out the office, remote. But I really like going in for that. I have an hour's commute, and it really helps you,
yeah.
switch off and process things a lot better than just walking down the stairs and having your tea, So it's yeah, it's a great advice. So
100%.
thank you so much. Friday afternoon done. You finish now.
Log off
You,
now.
you can switch off now. Yeah, yeah. Enjoy your weekend. But
Thank you.
Lauren, thank you so much. It's been brilliant. It's been brilliant speaking to you and getting your insight on your career so far, and some really cracking tidbits in there for to help people as well moving forward. So thank you so much for joining me.
No, thank you for having me.